Okay, everyone, welcome back. It's 12:20. Are you guys hungry yet? I want to just reiterate that we have put out a survey to CAMs and board members through Beyond the Boardroom, and we thank everyone who has given their feedback, provided us their best practices and what they think these education programs should be, when they should be, how we handle them. We usually have taken a lunch break, and the feedback that Lindsay and I worked with was that we worked through lunch. And so that's why we added the opportunity for some of these vendors who don't have CE credit yet to come in and talk about some of their services, because even though there's not credit, there's still a lot of good content. It also created the opportunity for Lindsay and I to do this class for you. This is the first time we did it, so we appreciate you helping us out here and providing your feedback for sure. But there is no credit. Feel free to eat your lunch while you're listening to us, but any feedback that you can give us, we would appreciate, because as I always say, the goal for us is education, for board members, for CAMs, and then for the dots to be connected with the vendors. So just real briefly, my background is that I've run a marketing agency since 2008, but I've worked in the association management world for at least 10 years now. And that's how I met Lindsay a long time ago. Lindsay has a unique position as a CAM. She has worked for corporate management company. She's worked for a family-owned company. She's worked on site for one association, and then she now has her own management company, and she has the flexibility of doing it on her own, which brings a different vantage point when it comes to the education. So I bring in the marketing and the business side, and she brings in the CAM side. And so together, we've seen great success in connecting the dots in the past year. One of the things that happens after each of these webinars is that Lindsay and I stay on the phone for a while going over what went well, what feedback we received, and how we can help the CAMs and board members more. One of the things that has come up recently is the ability for flexibility in this type of industry. Flexibility for CAMs, flexibility for vendors, flexibility for board members who are volunteers. Myself, having a marketing company, I've always 1099'd all of the people that work with me, and most of them have been with me for over 10 years. And going strong, because I hire the best in their field and then give them the opportunity to work as needed. It's been a great opportunity for me to keep costs low, which then creates a whole environment for my client to not have to be paying for the overhead that I have on paying for office space and paying for 401ks. My team has multiple clients. Like Lindsay's part of my team, but she also has the CAM business, and she's a realtor. So it gives flexibility for me and for the people I work with. I also closed my office down after COVID because we all were working at different levels, and I'm sure your businesses have adjusted. And whether you're a CAM that works at a corporate office, a family-run office, or you're on your own as well, I think we can all appreciate the flexibility in having flexibility. It's something that Lindsay and I have been talking a lot about recently, and we want to be that thought leader and open a space where we can hear from you guys as CAMs and board members to be able to find different types of education for you, where we will put together credited courses. But yeah, so that's how we kicked off this course, or this thought conversation. And Lindsay has an example that she wants to share that just recently happened with a board that approached her, an association that approached her. It
Yeah,
kind of made us go here.
so Diane and I have talked about this in the past, and we didn't execute, I guess, as quickly as maybe we should have, but I had a board reach out to me, a board president of an association, and they are looking for a new potentially a new manager, and asked me to give a proposal. And so I asked, let me know what you all are looking for, and I can let you know what I provide. Now, I'm not a big management company, I'm a small management company, so my services are a little bit different. And what I provide is different, but they sent me their scope of work, and there was not much of a scope. There wasn't a lot of information about, their accounting, what their manager currently needs to, is overseeing, what they're looking for, the changes. And that kind of brought up a conversation that Diane and I had, because we discussed this proposal. And, I had to send back an email with a spreadsheet, basically, of questions that I asking for answers to certain questions, about 20, so that I could have a picture of what they were really looking for, to be able to provide them with a quote that would be adequate. And I think, even, whether large management company, small management company, this is something as CAMs and board members that we struggle with, because so it's usually a lot of times a new board that's coming in, so they don't 100% know how things are going, and then they're looking for a new manager or management company. And so everyone's just trying to figure out what the association needs. And then that first year, expectations aren't met, because nobody really knew what they were getting into, right? The board didn't know what the board had done in the past. The CAM or the management company didn't know how much they were signing up for. Or maybe they didn't need as much time from a CAM or a management company as they thought they did. So this is where Diane and I started talking about, what should a property look for with a manager. Um, you know, CAMs, we're multitaskers, right? So most of us manage multiple properties. We're not just managing one property. And our schedule, as much as everyone would like it to be a 9 to 5, is not a reality. Meetings are after hours. Meetings are on weekends. Emergencies happen 1 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock on a Saturday. Maybe you're at your kid's baseball game, right? And the association is expecting the CAM to respond. So with flexibility gives flexibility. And this is where, in this new lovely world that we live in, that's different than 20, 30 years ago, we've learned that we have the ability to do our jobs from almost anywhere. To an extent, obviously, CAMs, we have to be able to go to properties, we have to be available for emergencies, but do we need to be sitting on site at a property 40 hours in order for that property to get the service that they need? Do you need a full management company? Do you need a small management company? This is where every property's, expectations and requirements for service are going to be different. And how do you figure out what you really need as a property? And as a CAM, how do you come in, and how is the board able to help you be successful when you're coming in as a new CAM, to give the service that is needed and have the information that you need to be able to give that service? And also, the new board coming in, how are they going to have the information, the historical information they need to be able to pick up right away and get moving? That 2-3 month transition time really takes away from your fiscal year on projects you need to get done and things that you're responsible for. So you really don't want to have that downtime. Again, hours. How many hours does your association really need your manager? How many properties are they managing? Diane,
Let me
question.
let's ask the group, for anyone that wants to put into the chat, how many hours more are you required to be working than you actually think that you need to be? Is that a good way to ask it? Just like,
So
for example,
yeah,
go
like
ahead.
if you're on site like let's say you're an on-site manager and you're on site 40 hours, how many hours do you really think you need to be on site versus how many hours do you need to be available by phone or email? You know,
Right.
right.
Yeah,
Anyone want to
I'd like
chime
to
in on
see
that?
I'd like to see, and if you're worried that your boss is on here,
We won't
you can,
tell. We
I
won't
don't
tell.
think
You can
they,
message
I
us.
guess
We won't use your name.
we have most are on site 60 plus hours during season, on call 55 plus hours. I used to work 12 hours a day between on site and working after hours. Now I'm trying to keep it to 8 hours max. Exactly. They really do not need to be there more than 40 hours. Okay, good. We're in good company. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if the reality is the first slide said, who really is a cam? I mean, if you're in this business, you're a self-starter, you're a multitasker, and you probably have the same things going on at home. Like Lindsay, she's a mom of three, she's a wife, she's in volunteer stuff. She's running her kids to cheer and to football and to weightlifting and all the things, and she keeps up with all of it. And it is miraculous to me because that is not something I have, fortunately. But that's the cam. Am I right? I mean, that's you guys, and it's kind of interesting when we see these proposals come in and they're like, we need you for Lindsay, when they're looking for representation, they're like, we need you to be sitting there for 40 hours, but there's only 20% of the condominium that's actually present all year round,
Yeah,
so
and to
there's
clarify, we're not saying that you shouldn't be working 40 hours a week. We're saying that do you need to be present on site, right? So I have a home office. I work out of my home. So my on-site time, I go, for weekly inspections or monthly inspections, depending on what the property needs. I go to meet with vendors. I go, anytime that I need to be on site to do something, or if there's specific office hours that we've worked out, like maybe they want someone on site 1 day a week for however many hours, or 2 times a week for however many hours in case there's questions. And again, every property is different. So some properties have a lot of vendors that are coming in and out that need to be managed. So yes, maybe you need someone on site. Do you need the cam on site, or do you need an admin on site? Do you have an on-site maintenance person that can give access to those things? What is the association spending money on that maybe they don't need to spend money on? And again, as the cam, can you communicate with the vendors offsite? Can you, put together your reports offsite? Can you communicate by email and phone offsite with owners? These are things that we're saying, not that you don't have to be available during the workday, but do you really need to be on site? And as a portfolio manager, you're not on site at individual properties most of the time. You're working from your office, at your management company. So again, you're not working on site, you're working as portfolio. So that just goes to show, right? You're able to service all 10, 12, 15 sometimes of your clients from an offsite location, and then you're on site when you need to be on site. And so that's something that, boards should take into consideration when looking for management services. Trying to go to the next slide. Okay. So we think that an evolving association document is a super important thing that every association should have as a CAM going into new properties. Rarely do I see one that has this. They've maybe attempted to have one in the past and it's partially filled out, or there was one, but nobody knows where it is, or it hasn't been updated for 5 years. So this is something that every association should have, and every CAM, this is a great thing for you too to have for your associations, because if you're working for a management company, maybe your portfolio changes. So then maybe there's another manager in your office that's taking on another property or your property, and maybe you're taking on a property from them. So we all know things get juggled to make everyone's workload as fair as possible. So we're constantly, making adjustments here and there. Maybe you're taking over an association that was managed by another company. So you have to have historical information, new information, and the association board members, when they're coming in, need to know what they're expecting out of a CAM, what their property needs from a CAM, so that if they're going out looking for a new management, they know what they're looking for. So this document really gives you all that information. So we're going to go through examples of a document that I use that we can update on an annual basis, like a minimum of an annual basis. Sometimes it needs to be updated more, but as long as you're updating it annually, it keeps everyone informed and you know what your scope of work for your property is all the time. So first thing, obviously, general property information. You might call it Parkside HOA. Its actual name might be Parkside Homeowners Association, Inc., registered with the state of Florida. So we need to know what the actual property name is. Is it an HOA or a condo? What is the physical address? how many units, what year was it built. Obviously, that's information that's pretty easy to maintain on a regular basis because it doesn't change. From the accounting side, do you need a management company that has a large accounting department? Do you need a bookkeeper, or can you, maybe mix it up? Like I personally, I manage separately, so I have my management company and then I outsource the financials. So my financing, I use a certain company. And you can use that company, you can use a CPA, you can use a bookkeeper. Sometimes, if it's a small HOA, maybe the treasurer is managing the books. Yes, Diane.
You had mentioned, and this is for board members, but also CAMs to keep in mind, if a board changes like a management company, for example, and can you just go over that from a technology standpoint, like how that works with banking?
Sure. So, anyone who's been in a transition, changing management companies or CAMs, that that's a process, right? So every management company, every financial company, bookkeeper, et cetera, uses a different system. Some people have Vanica. Some people in the past, I haven't used Tops in a long time, but I know that that was something that was used. Some people have proprietary software that they use. I know a few large companies that I worked for had their own software that they had developed, and that's what they used. So when you're talking about transferring um, an association from one management company to another, you're usually, a lot of times your bank accounts are having to go to a different bank, whatever bank integrates with their system or that they use and work with. So maybe you're at SunTrust and now, well, I think Truist was SunTrust. So maybe you're at, Wells Fargo and now you have to go to Truist. Um, then all the login information changes for people to go in and pay their bills. They have to get new coupons. It's a whole situation. You know, um, the historical banking information has to be transferred. So all these things have to be transferred. Where if you're with a specific financial company, which is what I do, if you decide that we're not getting along or a new board comes in and wants a new person, they can change me, but their accounting all stays the same. Hopefully they don't not like me because I feel like I do a good job and get along with everyone, but there's always personality conflicts, or the new board comes in and wants to bring in their own people, and that's okay, and it happens. And so for me, this is a good way for me to provide that flexibility where if an association is with my company, if they choose to send me on my way and get somebody else, they don't have to change all their login information for their banks and all that. That all stays the same and they're with the same company. But we all know that that is something that takes time. So when you're going to get a proposal from another management company as a board, you need to know how many cost centers do you have? How many different banks are you with? How many accounts do you have? Do you have debit and credit cards? Who has those? Does the CAM have those? Does the board president have those? Does the treasurer have those? Who has access? Do you have investment accounts? Are your reserves in an investment account that's getting interest? If not, definitely something to look into. There's no reason to not be making money on your money that's just sitting in the bank. How many
Amen.
bills do you pay a month? If you're a small association and you're getting a quote from a management company and there's 5 bills that you pay enough, that's a big difference from someone who has 25 or 30. There's going to be a savings if you can provide that information. When are your dues collected? Are they monthly, quarterly, annually? How much is that? Then they know what they're dealing with, how many times they're going to be dealing with getting checks in, balancing that, sending out late notices, etc. Do you have a special assessment going on right now? A lot of condos, this is something that we've seen in the very recent past. As soon as they require those SRIS inspections and you had to fully fund your reserves, a lot of associations had to do special assessments. Some were ongoing assessments to catch up. So a lot of you, if you're in a condo, you might be in a position where you're dealing with a special assessment. That's an extra thing that the accounting department is going to have to deal with. Important to know. Do you have any employees on site? And who's going to have to process that payroll? If the management company or financial institution is going to have to do that, that's something they need to know because there's going to be a cost associated. Most management companies use payroll companies to do that. So there's a percentage that's tacked on, and the, small amount of employees, it's usually a higher percentage. So your meeting schedule. This is something important, and this is great for incoming board members and CAMs. Everyone in your documents, it states when your annual meeting is supposed to be. For condos, sometimes it's a specific date. It might be the second Tuesday of, December. Whatever your documents say, that's what you have to follow. So important to know when your annual meeting is, because for condos, you have to send out two notices. You have to send a first notice and a second notice. So if you know when that annual meeting is, everyone can keep track of when that first notice needs to go out. And if you have it on this document that you're referring to when you're at your meetings and when you're going and, checking what you need to be doing that month, you'll know, okay, listen, next month we have to send out that first notice. So we need to make sure that this is a priority that we're on. Budget meeting. When is that? Is there a specific date that it has to be done? Some have specific dates in their documents. Some say that, it just needs to be done by the end of the year. Again, the budget has to be mailed a minimum of 30 days prior to that meeting. So, an important date to always have on your mind and to set a reminder on your calendar. And you can use this document to have that information. Board meetings, are they monthly, quarterly? How often do you meet? Very important for a CAM to know. Are they going to be at your property one Saturday a month every month? That's going to determine how much of their time that they're giving outside of office hours to your association and will affect it. Or maybe you're someone who only is requiring, quarterly meetings. And later you'll see maybe it's virtual. So that, if they can attend virtually, maybe it's not such a big deal. Board member, their title, their name, the date they were elected. Is it a 1-year term? Does your association have multi-year terms for certain positions? Are they staggered? Important information to keep track of so you always know that year when you're planning your annual meeting, when you're sending out those ballots, who is up for reelection. Important information, committee information, who the what committees do you have? Do you have a landscape committee? Do you have a maintenance committee? Important on that is knowing their responsibilities, right? Does your landscape committee go out and get the bids every year? Do they do all the heavy lifting and then they bring the information to the meeting? Something important to say. Some associations have committees that are very involved and participate, some don't. If your committees are involved in doing the hard work and your manager's just going over it, presenting it at the meeting, and you all are voting, then maybe that takes a lot less of the manager's time. Same with board. How involved is the board, right? Is the treasurer very involved? Does the treasurer write the treasurer's report every month? Do they expect the manager or the management company to provide a treasurer's report? Expectations need to be defined. These are the things that make everyone's life easy. We all know if we know what we're expected to do, we can meet those expectations. If we don't, we can't. The property that I referred to earlier, I don't think that they, define the expectation of exactly what they need. And that makes it hard for anyone coming into that position to be able to provide the service that they're looking for. And then again, contact information is really important so that the managers know right away, how they can get a hold of the different committee members and board members. Here we go with the manager. Obviously important to have your management company, the CAM's name, email address, phone number. Is there a 24-hour line? If there's an emergency, is that a different number than your CAM's phone number or cell phone number? Important to know because in an emergency, when you need to get a hold of someone, you don't want to be looking for that phone number. You want to know what number you're supposed to call if a pipe bursts at midnight and there's water pouring down the stairs and you need someone to get on that right away. You want to know who you're calling and what the phone number is. Again, how many on-site hours? What days and times? Is it 5 days a week? Is it 2 days a week? Is it 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday? Are you looking for Tuesday through Saturday? Also important. Some associations want someone there on the weekends because that's when most of their owners and visitors are there. Something you need to let someone know. And then vendors, you always want to have a vendor list that has all the information for your vendors, whether it's someone that's on your property all the time. Sometimes, who, obviously the easy ones, your landscaping contractor. Does your landscaping do irrigation or is that somebody else? Who does the pest control? Is it the same person for the lawn pest and the building? Gate system. If your gate to access your property goes down, you want to be able to real quickly get the phone number for the person you need to contact. Your garage door, if you have a garage at your property, like the condos that have underneath. Is there someone different for lighting? Is FPL responsible for your lighting? If all of a sudden the lights on your parking deck aren't working, you want to get that addressed immediately because you need it to be safe for your owners and their visitors to be able to get in and out of the building to their cars. You know, your fire sprinkler system, your pumps, big problem. If you have a water leak with a fire pump, you better get on it immediately because I've seen that cause damage to a building that took months, probably more than a year really, to fix, and people were without use of elevators and it was a disaster. So that you want to get on immediately. You know, who does your fire extinguishers once a year? Um, leak detection. We had leak detection earlier, so who are you going to contact should you think that there's a leak? Yes, ma'am.
Well, and I just want to plug in here, of course, please use Beyond the Boardroom vendors for all of these, but you may want to have, three vendor directories, your current one, and then the two other ones that you're going to get bids from for your board to have that three bids process. Because we always say be part of the three bids to our vendors. You want to be able to be competitive. You want to make sure that, that the companies that you're working with, I've seen it a lot, they get complacent. They land There's all kinds of things that happen when you have vendor relationships long term. Some things can go bad and some things can go good. So and best practices are three bids. So and a lot of boards require that. So maybe have like a vendor directory that's your major or your current rather, and then you have your two. When you're doing Beyond the Boardroom classes, you plug in the information if they're in your service area to contact them when it's time for bid renewals.
Yeah, and that's something else too. You know, you want to make sure as a board that you're not using, if you stay with the same landscape company because they're doing a great job, that's great. But you should still every year or two put it out to bid. Make sure that you're still paying the right price for your association and you're not overpaying, because prices fluctuate in the industry. Maybe you can get the same service for a little bit less, and maybe you don't want to because maybe someone's doing a great job and it's better for you to just stay with that person. Yes,
Yeah, and
ma'am.
I feel like it's not said enough. And especially, I used to actually work with a management company where I would go out and do the one-on-ones with board members. And it's not said enough that the association is a business. It's not just your residents board members. It is a business. And we all went through the challenges with the changes of this past year with SIRS and the structural integrity reserve studies and the unfortunate events that have happened. And I myself lived in a condominium, a COA, that our monthly dues never went up. And if they went up, it was like $5. And I'm like, something's going on here. And I found out that the majority of the board owned like a high percentage of the condominiums that were in the whole community. And so of course they didn't want to raise the monthlies because they had so many condos. So they were looking out for their best interest, not the best interest of the community. And when I found out that everything was changing, I sold those condos because I knew that we were going to get hit for it with a high assessment. I think too often board members and CAMs forget. Well, I don't want to say camps. I want to say board members. And I'm sorry to the board members if but it's a business for all. You're a resident in a business for all. And I think we've all seen the board members that get on the board for self-interest. And we have seen the challenges and horrific events that take place when people don't do their jobs right. And unfortunately, when these boards who are volunteers, non-paid people, as CAMs, we have to keep them on, you guys have to keep them on track and keep reminding them that it's a business. And as a business, every year I'm calling my Spectrum and finding out, am I getting the best internet price? I change my phone provider often, Mint Mobile. I literally spend $15 a month. It's wonderful. I've traveled around the world with it and had no problems. But you have to do these things. And if you're efficient and you have vendor information in a format like this, when it is time for a bid renewal and a board member says, oh, or the board says, we really like these people, remind them kindly that this is a business and we'd like to put it out for bid because we want to make sure that everybody is doing their job and that they're doing best practices. A lot of businesses do not invest in continuing education and provide putting their own teams through continuing education and certifications and and spending money on educating board members. Those are the companies that get it and that understand the present and future of the industry. Just wanted 2 cents in there.
Yes. And exactly like Diane said, and I was going to use that as an example, and Paradigm was just with us. So when your cable bill goes up by $50 a month, do you just pay that? If it automatically goes up a certain percentage, because that's what your contract says, if you stay with them, do you just say, okay, fine? No, you go and you look and you see, can I save money if I go somewhere else? And that's the same thing with the contracts for your association, right? You may not change. You may decide to stay, even if your landscaper is a little bit higher than the bids that you've gotten. And you probably have reason to stay with them if you choose to do that. But it's your due diligence, right? You're responsible for that. As a board member, as a CAM, you at least need to be able to say that you went out there and you looked at other options and that who you have is your best option. All right. So annual inspections. So this is important because especially at condominium buildings, and I thought about one that I don't have on here today, a backflow. Condos have backflows. They have to be recertified every year. So if you pass that date, then you're going to get a red tag. You have to get it done right away. And, usually you're paying, an extra fee for having someone rush out there. The same thing with your fire sprinkler pump. That's really important, right? You got to make sure it's working. You need to make sure you're getting those inspections done annually as required. Because God forbid there's a fire and it wasn't inspected and recertified and the system doesn't work. Who's responsible for that? Well, whoever let the ball drop and didn't get that inspected and repaired if needed. Your fire extinguisher, same thing. Your certificate of insurance, something that the insurance agency we're working with is going to talk about hopefully next month. Very important. You have to renew that. So you don't want to get to renewal time and then at the last minute be trying to get this done so that you can get your insurance renewed. Wind mitigation, something that's important. A lot of condo buildings, the condo is responsible for that, obviously, not because it's not an individually owned property. But that's important because if you get your wind mitigation done on your condo roof, you can send that to your owners and they can submit that. And on their individual insurance, they can get some money off. Balcony inspections, these are things that are required. If you have a building that has any rentals in it, even if they're not managed by the association, if owners rent out their units and they need to get a permit from the county, they're required to submit this to the county in order to get their rental permit. So something that is important to know and to know when you need to do it. I think that those are good for 3 years, three to 5 years. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check. But again, important to know, when does it expire? When do you need to have it renewed? Your booster pump. Anyone who lives in a condo building over 3 stories, booster pump, super important. Guess what? If it stops working, anyone above the 5th floor, they're lucky if they're getting water dripping. You're not going to be taking a shower and rinsing your hair. So you want to make sure those get inspected and are working because otherwise the upper floors are not going to have any water pressure if they get water at all. Something we don't think about, cleaning your trash chutes. Disgusting, they're gross. We all know. You open the door to put your trash in and you don't breathe because you don't want to breathe it in. Get them cleaned every year. Get them cleaned every 2 years. Large scale projects. This is something that is nice to have on your paper as well because, again, when you're in a board meeting or you're talking to a committee and you're trying to remember when the last time you did these big projects so that you know when you need to do them in the future, it's nice not to have to go back through the files or try to find the invoice for the last time the roofing company was out to do a repair or replace it, or the last time someone was there doing concrete restoration, or when the pool was resurfaced, right? Because these are not things that we're doing on an annual basis. So it's probably a few boards past, and maybe everyone doesn't recall, oh gosh, was it 2020 or was it 2017? I don't know. Time flies. I can't keep track of stuff in my own life that happened, whether it was 2 years ago, 4 years ago, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that was 5 years ago. That's crazy. So important to know when you've done things. Cast iron pipes, this is a problem. If you're a building that's doing a full relining, that's wonderful. I know a building that did one a couple years ago. It's a disaster. It's a pain. People don't like it, but once it's done, it's done. If you're not doing a full relining, it is important to have a log to know what has been replaced and what hasn't, so that, as you can plan to replace sections, or if there's an area that's been leaking, there's a lot of leaks, maybe this needs to be handled. Also, if your owners are doing renovations in their units and they're opening up walls, tell them to let you know. Have the cast iron pipes inspected while the wall is open. Saves everybody a lot of money. Maybe you can replace those sections while they're doing a renovation in their unit, so that should you have to do it in the future, you're not having to tear out their brand new cabinets to get to those pipes. Pool pump, pool heater. Keep good records. Again, have like a little note section like I have on this one, so that you can make a little note, like maybe it wasn't replaced in 2025, but maybe, you replaced a certain part of it in 2025. So you can make a note that, you did a replacement of this part or that part, or it was serviced. That way, okay, look, we just had it serviced 6 months ago. It's probably fine. We don't need to have it looked at again right now. Something that a new cam or a new board coming in may not know, because, they're not looking at every single invoice that was paid the years prior. All right, so as I said earlier, obviously that working document helps with a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about right now. But that's information that helps you when you're getting proposals for management, proposals for accounting services, and also, most importantly, it does help with you as your boards change, as your managers change. It's historical information, and it's information I keep like a 3-ring binder for each of my properties. And that's something that you can keep in that binder. As a board member or a CAM, I bring that binder with me to all my board meetings, and I make sure I have it if I'm on site meeting with a vendor. And it has important information. And this is something that can go in the front, so you can always refer to it if something comes up. And a lot of times that's going to be the information you need to refer to. And as the CAM, it's great to not have to say, when an owner asks a question, let me look into that and get back to you. To be able to answer it right then, it's off your plate. They got what they wanted, and now everyone can move on, and you're not having to have, 10 things you have to go back to your office to do when that meeting ends. For your contract mindset, as a board, you want to work with your manager. As a manager, you want to work with your on-site staff, right? Define your responsibilities. Who's responsible for what? What does the CAM really need to be doing? What is the CAM, what is it most useful for the CAM to be doing? So, manager versus maintenance staff. If you have an on-site maintenance person, what is that person responsible for? Does it make sense for the manager to walk the property every week and make a huge list for the maintenance person? If you have a good maintenance person, the answer is no, because the maintenance person knows what needs to be done. Have a log, have a check sheet for them to be checking off, or making notes of things that need to be done, and have them submit that to the manager. And then the manager can check up with the maintenance person. They can make a list of when these things that the maintenance person has found need to be done should be done. They can check and make sure they're done. They're managing the maintenance staff. If you have a capable maintenance person, I don't like to babysit my people. If you work for me and you're a maintenance person, you should know how to do your job, and I should not have to babysit you. Now, is it my responsibility to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and oversee it? 100%. Is it my responsibility to make sure that you have the supplies and tools that you need to do your job? 100%. But I shouldn't have to go behind you and make a list of that you need to touch up paint here, that you need to go clean the AC lines here. These should be things that you're doing as the maintenance person. And important, maybe you don't have a maintenance person like that. Maybe you don't have the budget to pay for that level of a maintenance person. And so then your manager has to do that. Things to know at your property specifically. What does your CAM need to do with regard to that? And what is the maintenance staff's responsibility? Board versus manager. There are boards that are very hands-on. There are boards that show up at the board meeting and that's it. We all have lived and dealt with one or the other. And so that's important to know, right? Who's responsible to do what? Define the roles. Everyone doesn't need to be doing the same thing. It's a waste of time. So if your landscape committee is going to go out and get landscape bids, make sure that you're communicating that with the CAM. The CAM doesn't also need to be reaching out to people to get bids if the committee wants to handle it. Does the landscape committee chair want to be the person that walks around with the landscape company once a month? Is the CAM going to do it? Are they both going to do it? Make sure everyone knows what they're doing and what they need to be doing. Again, setting expectations means success for everyone. Committees, I can't say enough about committees. I think it's hard to get people to want to be board members because in your mind, it's a very big job. It's not a paid for job. Committees, you sometimes have a much greater chance of getting people to partake in. Maybe you have a committee that, walks around after the manager gives, the list of violations in your community, and maybe that committee can go around and check on them so that you're not having to have the manager come out every 2 weeks to do that, because depending on what your process is, sometimes you send a violation letter and then 14 days later you're sending a second notice. Well, if you only pay your manager to come, and this is more for HOAs, if you're only paying your manager to come once a month, then in 14 days it's not getting checked again. It's not getting checked for another 30 days. So how are you going to handle that? What is the expectation there? Um, you have holiday decorating. I know we're talking about that a lot right now. What is the rule for that? I live in a wonderful community. It's very large. We have a couple of people that go above and beyond for Christmas, and the decorations were already starting to go up on Halloween, and the tree inside was already up. Some people love that, some people hate that. So are you going to have a committee that's going to look out for those things? Are you sticklers for that? I personally say decorate, go for it. It makes everybody feel the love of the holidays. And in Florida, when it's unlike today, usually hot, sometimes we need that to get in the holiday spirit. But do you decorate your entrance to your neighborhood? Who's going to do that? Who's responsible? Who's going to go take it all down? You can get people to put it up a lot of times, but you got to make sure you have people to go take it down. And then where is all of that stored? Do you have a committee that handles that? And then, what is your requirement for your manager? What do you expect? So, are you expecting that your manager respond to phone calls and emails the same day? I always like to say 24 business hours, meaning if you email me today, you'll hear from me no later than tomorrow. Obviously, if it's a weekend, you might hear back from me, might not. That's where I say the flexibility. If you give flexibility, you get flexibility. I don't work on site generally. So for me, if you send me a text message at 7 o'clock at night, I use a cell phone as my business phone. You're probably going to get an answer because I have an inability to not check my emails or text messages after business hours. If it's a Saturday, you're probably going to get a response too. I'm the type of person who would rather deal with it now and instead of walk in on Monday morning and have just a full email box and phone calls to return. So again, maybe they're not on site all the time, but they're available for you here and there outside of office hours. And meeting attendance. When is it? Or do they have to be there in person? Are they able to attend virtually? This is important for homeowners too. You know, we all have lives. We're all busy. A lot of us have kids or grandkids. There's a lot going on. Maybe you live locally, maybe you don't. So to make your board members be able to have meetings virtually is great. My association, like I said, it's very large. I live in an HOA. Recently, within the last year, they've started allowing people to participate in viewing via Zoom, but there's no questions. You can't talk, you can't ask questions. So even if you don't want people to be able to participate via Zoom, having your meeting broadcast on Zoom so they can at least watch and get the information, that's a nice thing to do. You don't have to allow them to speak. You don't have, you can have them muted, can't see them, all those things, but at least if they can hear the information, so beneficial for homeowners to stay informed of what's going on the property. It really alleviates a lot of problems when it comes to, all of a sudden people are like, why do I have this assessment? Or why did our dues go up? Or why can't I do this anymore? Or I got a violation letter for this. Since when was that? Why aren't we allowed to park here anymore? I saw the pool hours changed. If they're able to at least log in on their phone, log in on their computer, and listen. They'll answer a lot of their questions, and you'll save yourself as a board member and a CAM a lot of times. So as a CAM, boards don't like to do the Zoom thing. I get it. Sometimes they only want to do in person. At least maybe see if they're willing to broadcast it so the owners that can't attend in person can at least listen in. Always remember this. This is so important. You guys are a team. Everyone's supposed to work together, not against each other. Board members, the CAM is representing you, but keep in mind that they're responsible to the owners in your association as well as you as board members. So they have responsibilities to make sure that you're doing things the right way, right? That's why associations have CAMs. We know the statutes, we know what the law requires. We know how to somewhat interpret your documents and be able to say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do this. Yes, this requires an ownership vote. No, this requires just a board vote. You have to give this many days notice. So many things that you as volunteer board members, you're not educated on. You don't know. And that's why you have a CAM. At the same time, residents, owners, if you're not on the board, if you're in an association and you don't agree what's going on, something that, a lot of associations deal with, know this. The CAM can advise the board, and this is so important as CAMs to, I think, reiterate this at meetings, especially if you're managing an association where there's volatility between the board and the homeowners. As a CAM, we work at the discretion of the board, right? We can advise you, we can tell you what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. We can try to lead you in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the board is the one that makes the decision, and the CAM doesn't have a lot of control. So all owners keep that in mind. Don't right away be upset with your CAM. Ask questions, get the information. And if it's your board doing things that they shouldn't be doing, complain about it all day long. But if you don't want to step up, they're the ones that are there doing it. So be ready to step up, get involved. It's not that much work. And depending on what you have your CAM doing, the CAM can do a lot of that work for you if the board doesn't want to spend that much time doing it. But again, if you want to make the change, if you don't like the way that your board is doing things, remember it's a volunteer board, so you can volunteer. And then get your affairs in order, right? So this is a business. It's like in life, right? Something happens to you, your spouse, your parents, your kids, they have to pick up and be able to pick up the pieces from where, it's left. So you want to make sure, and this document will do it for you, that you have all the information somewhere where someone can go take a quick glance and at least be able to deal with the day-to-day business if needed at the drop of a hat. So the document that I shared today, I'm happy to provide to any of you if you want to send me an email. I'm not going to just blanketly send it out, but if you want it, I will happily send it your way. You can shoot me an email and I will share that with you, so that you can have that to use for your association if you're a board member or your association as a CAM.
Yeah, I love it, Lindsay. I want to just, bookend it with saying, because the way that my marketing agency works, being able to work with the best of the best in the most affordable way. We were just talking to a client that's also a vendor here earlier this morning, and there was a marketing agency that said there's no way that her agency can produce that for that much money. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't have an office, and this I have 1099 people because they're business professionals, and they've been doing photography, videography, drone, cam forever, and I don't need to be with them. My overhead is minimal. I'm able to have flexibility in my life, which keeps me happy, and a happy me keeps happy clients. And I think it's the same thing in the cam world. So if you're a board member and you are, used to, and I know we all hear it all the time, well, this is how we always do it. This is how we've always done it, kind of verbiage. It is 2025, almost 2026. Technology is insane. Efficiency is there. And, what are you paying for? When you're thinking about the future and what you're going to be doing and who you're working with, what are you paying for? Are you paying for an accounting department when you can just outsource your accounting and make it easy when you want to change? Because like she said, like Lindsay said, there is a lot of work that goes into going from one management company to the next that creates a lot of communication that's not necessary for the residents and the board and the CAM. So it's, what are best practices for your association today? And then maybe they're different next year. And so, having this evolving document and reviewing it and really identifying the needs. Well, and I have a friend who's a CAM, and his association, he said 60% of the demographic changed in the past 2 years because there were a lot of people that had passed away, that had, that and a new group came in, a new, like, younger families came in, so their pool wasn't being used as much, but now it is, because there's families there, and there was, a demographic that was yielding older. And so you do have to review these things and keep these things in mind and really identify what you're paying for, because your money does not go as far as it should sometimes. And working with the best of the best, if they're efficient, then they're affordable and they do a good job. I mean, really, that's one of our practices, and beyond the boardroom and in my company in Callan Group. We keep things affordable because we want to work with people for a long time, So just want to see if there's any comments. What did we think, everybody, on our first run at it? I think Lindsay did a great job.
Thanks.
Can I just read articles from FS Florida Statute
Yeah.
718 to,
So
did you see
I used, and as soon as I said the word interpret during the presentation, I realized that was not the correct word to use. As CAMs, you're not allowed to interpret the documents. You can advise them of the statute. So yes, refer them to the statute. Tell them, if this, whatever the statute is, you can advise them on what they should do. And then if they don't understand or they think that you're wrong, this is where they should really go to their attorney, and ask to the attorney, right? So some people, I'm trying to think of an example, but for example, like some association documents will say that the board can vote to change a rule. It's not an amendment, it's a rule. Some say that they have to send notice to homeowners X days before the meeting. It has to be an agended item. They have to give notice for everyone to attend, etc. Some documents say that you have to get owner vote to change rules. My association right now is looking to make changes to their architectural guidelines. I just got an email about that myself. That's something that I'm going to go review today so that I can make sure I'm at that meeting and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do and that I'm not going to be affected negatively. So, but yeah, I mean, you can guide a board. You're not supposed to interpret the documents, but you do know the statutes, right? So you can tell them what the statute said and what the statute requires. And if they need any further advisement other than that, obviously I would always recommend that they reach out to their attorney because, we all want to make sure that we're doing things the right way.
And Lindsay, on the there was a question if you provide internship, and you responded to the host. So could you just address that
I
for
did.
everyone
So
else?
I don't provide internships, but part of why Diane and I started this was to help CAMs and board members and help everyone be educated. So if you're a new CAM or a CAM that doesn't work for a management company, so there's, not someone above you that you can go ask a question, reach out to me. I might be able to help you, I might not, but I'll definitely try or at least lead you in a direction where you can get the answer that you're looking for. 100%, we're here to help. We think that the CAM community, should all work together no matter what management company you work for, whether you work for yourself, what property, what you do. We're all here to help each other to make our lives all easier. So definitely reach out to me if there's anything I can ever help you with.
Yes, thank you, Lindsay. Okay, guys, we'll be starting at 1:15 with George Kennedy with Terrascape. We're excited to have him back.